Madam Foreperson, on indictment 2013-983-A, charging the defendant Aaron Hernandez with murder, what say you, Madam Foreperson? Is the defendant not guilty, guilty of murder in the first degree, or guilty of murder in the second degree?
Guilty of murder in the first degree.
This is Aaron Hernandez, age 23. A rising NFL star, Aaron Hernandez was a name that once lit up the NFL. A dynamic and talented tight end for the New England Patriots, he became one of the most promising young players in the league. With his impressive athleticism, Hernandez quickly rose to fame, earning a massive $40 million contract with the Patriots, securing his place among football's elite. To the outside world, his life seemed like the ultimate success story. A young man from modest beginnings making it big in the world of professional sports. But behind his athletic prowess and lavish lifestyle, a darker reality existed. As Hernandez's fame grew, so did his involvement in troubling behavior. His sudden and tragic fall from grace began with the shocking murder of his friend Odin Lloyd in 2013, a crime that would unravel the life Hernandez had so carefully constructed. The once promising star would soon find himself in handcuffs, facing charges that would end his career, his freedom, and ultimately his life. The story of Aaron Hernandez is more than just a tale of success and tragedy. It is a complex narrative about the dangerous intersection of fame, personal demons, and unchecked mental health issues. Hernandez's case highlights the often hidden psychological struggles that athletes face, including the impact of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, substance abuse, and the pressure of living under the public's intense gaze. By understanding Hernandez's story, we can better grasp the psychological toll of fame and the tragic consequences when that darkness is left unchecked. Before we dive deeper into Hernandez's life and the events leading to his arrest, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. You won't want to miss the shocking twists ahead. Aaron Hernandez was born on November 6, 1989, in Bristol, Connecticut, to a close-knit but complicated family. Raised in a working-class neighborhood, Aaron's early life was shaped by the intense pressure placed on him by his father, Dennis Hernandez. Dennis was a former athlete who had big dreams for his sons, and he made sure Aaron knew it. His relationship with his father was one of both admiration and fear. Dennis pushed Aaron hard, demanding excellence in both academics and athletics. But the pressure often crossed the line, with Dennis known for his harsh discipline and sometimes violent behavior. Aaron was particularly close to his father, who he saw as both a role model and a source of guidance. But when Dennis passed away unexpectedly from complications of a hernia surgery in 2006, Aaron was left devastated. His father's death would mark a major turning point in Aaron's life, leaving him to navigate the world without the person he had admired most. Despite the family's struggles, Aaron's athletic ability was undeniable. He was a natural talent in multiple sports, excelling in football, basketball, and track. But it was on the football field where he truly shined. At Bristol Central High School, Hernandez became a local legend. His combination of size, speed, and agility made him a nightmare for defenders, and by his senior year, he was regarded as one of the best tight end prospects in the country. In addition to football, Aaron was also a standout on the basketball court. He was known for his competitiveness and fiery attitude, qualities that would both help and hinder him in his future career. But it was his football skills that caught the attention of top universities across the country. Enjoying the deep dive into Aaron's early years? Don't forget to subscribe for more insights into the story of his rise and fall, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. In 2007, Aaron Hernandez made the pivotal decision to attend the University of Florida, a school known for producing top-tier talent under the leadership of Coach Urban Meyer. Despite his potential, Hernandez's college career was marked by both incredible performances on the field and troubling off-field behavior. He joined a team that had just won its second national championship and immediately became one of the key players in the Gators' high-powered offense. During his time at Florida, Hernandez quickly became a star, He showcased his unique versatility as a tight end, capable of both blocking and receiving, and he developed into one of the most dynamic players in college football. But as Hernandez's football career soared, so did his personal issues. He became known for his fiery temper and occasional run-ins with the law. Want to see how Aaron's time at the University of Florida set the stage for his eventual downfall? Let us know in the comments what you think about his college years. By 2010, Hernandez was ready to take his talents to the NFL. Despite his off-field troubles, including rumors of failed drug tests and an incident at a bar where he punched an employee, Hernandez was still highly regarded by NFL scouts for his exceptional talent. However, his troubled past caused him to slip to the fourth round of the NFL draft, where the New England Patriots took a chance on him with the 113th overall pick. Hernandez's rookie season was nothing short of spectacular. He quickly made an impact on the Patriots' offense, forming a powerful duo with fellow tight end Rob Gronkowski. Together, they helped revolutionize the tight end position in the NFL. Hernandez's ability to line up anywhere on the field, from tight end to wide receiver, made him a matchup nightmare for defenses. In just his second season, he helped the Patriots reach the Super Bowl and signed a major contract extension worth $40 million, securing his place among the NFL's elite. But as Hernandez's football career flourished, his personal life began to spiral. His involvement in a series of troubling incidents off the field, including violent outbursts, run-ins with the law, and his growing association with dangerous individuals, hinted at the dark side that would soon come to light. Though Aaron Hernandez had the world at his feet, his personal life was anything but stable. The pivotal moment that would shape his emotional and psychological journey came in 2006 with the sudden and tragic death of his father, Dennis Hernandez. Aaron, who had looked up to his father as both a role model and a source of discipline, was devastated by the loss. It marked the beginning of a transformation, from the star athlete into someone who struggled to cope with the challenges of life without his father's guidance. Do you really think the loss of his father affected his decisions later in life? With his father's passing, Hernandez found himself emotionally adrift. His relationship with his mother, Terry Hernandez, was strained, and he began to act out in ways that became increasingly difficult to ignore. He went from being a star student and athlete to a young man struggling with anger, sadness, and confusion. Without his father's influence, Hernandez lacked the emotional support that he had once relied on. This growing instability played a significant role in the unraveling of his promising future. As Hernandez entered adulthood, his personal troubles began to manifest in dangerous ways. While his on-field performance continued to excel off the field, he started to make questionable decisions. He fell in with a crowd of individuals who were involved in petty crime and violence. Hernandez was no longer the talented athlete rising to fame. He was now a man wrestling with his demons and indulging in destructive behavior. By 2010, Hernandez was ready to take his talents to the NFL. Despite his off-field troubles, including rumors of failed drug tests and an incident at a bar where he punched an employee, Hernandez was still highly regarded by NFL scouts for his exceptional talent. However, his troubled past caused him to slip to the fourth round of the NFL draft, where the New England Patriots scout took a chance on him with the 113th overall pick. Hernandez's rookie season was nothing short of spectacular. He quickly made an impact on the Patriots' offense, forming a powerful duo with fellow tight end Rob Gronkowski. Together, they helped revolutionize the tight end position in the NFL. Hernandez's ability to line up anywhere on the field from tight end to wide receiver made him a matchup nightmare for defenses. In just his second season, he helped the Patriots reach the Super Bowl and signed a major contract extension worth $40 million, securing his place among the NFL's elite. But as Hernandez's football career flourished, his personal life began to spiral. His involvement in a series of troubling incidents off the field, including violent outbursts, run-ins with the law, and his growing association with dangerous individuals, hinted at the dark side that would soon come to light. Though Aaron Hernandez had the world at his feet, His personal life was anything but stable. The pivotal moment that would shape his emotional and psychological journey came in 2006 with the sudden and tragic death of his father, Dennis Hernandez. Aaron, who had looked up to his father as both a role model and a source of discipline, was devastated by the loss. It marked the beginning of a transformation, from the star athlete into someone who struggled to cope with the challenges of life without his father's guidance. Do you really think the loss of his father affected his decisions later in life? With his father's passing, Hernandez found himself emotionally adrift. His relationship with his mother, Terry Hernandez, was strained, and he began to act out in ways that became increasingly difficult to ignore. He went from being a star student and athlete to a young man struggling with anger, sadness, and confusion. Without his father's influence, Hernandez lacked the emotional support that he had once relied on. This growing instability played a significant role in the unraveling of his promising future. As Hernandez entered adulthood, his personal troubles began to manifest in dangerous ways. While his on-field performance continued to excel, off the field, he started to make questionable decisions. He fell in with a crowd of individuals who were involved in petty crime and violence. Hernandez was no longer the talented athlete rising to fame. He was now a man wrestling with his demons and indulging in destructive behavior. Hernandez's growing association with known criminals like Carlos Ortiz and Ernest Wallace raised serious red flags. These individuals were known for their involvement in illegal activities, and Hernandez's connection to them would ultimately lead to his involvement in criminal events. His tendency to resort to violence, and his increasing association with people who had a history of criminal behavior, painted a troubling picture of the star tight end, one that contradicted the public's image of a gifted athlete with a bright future. A significant factor in Hernandez's downward spiral was his increasing use of the drugs and alcohol. While his talent on the field remained undeniable, Hernandez's personal life was consumed by partying, excessive drinking, and marijuana use. His lifestyle became a dangerous mix of fame, substance abuse, and reckless decisions. It wasn't just recreational use. Hernandez was consuming substances that would cloud his judgment and affect his mental state. One of the most alarming developments was his use of PCP, a powerful and dangerous drug. PCP, often laced with marijuana, caused Hernandez to become more paranoid, aggressive, and erratic in his behavior. This addiction to mind-altering substances would fuel his growing aggression and contribute to the volatile temper that would later be associated with the murder of Odin Lloyd and other violent incidents. Long before the murder of Odin Lloyd, Hernandez had run-ins with the law. In 2007, just months after starting college at the University of Florida, he was involved in a bar incident where he assaulted a restaurant employee after an argument over a bill. Hernandez punched the employee, rupturing his eardrum, and though police recommended felony charges, the incident was settled out of court. The powerful position Hernandez found himself in allowed him to avoid the consequences of his actions, a pattern that would continue throughout his career. We'll be diving into the consequences of these early decisions in the next section. Don't go anywhere. Hernandez's temper and violent outbursts were beginning to define him off the field, with several incidents involving threats and altercations. His sense of entitlement, a characteristic often seen in athletes at the height of fame, made him believe that he could avoid accountability for his actions. This disregard for consequences was the beginning of his undoing. Instead of facing the reality of his actions, Hernandez found himself sinking deeper into a world of violence and criminal behavior. It all began on June 17, 2013, when a jogger in North Attleboro, Massachusetts, stumbled upon a grisly scene: the body of a man, shot multiple times, lying in an industrial park. The victim was later identified as Odin Lloyd, a 27-year-old semi-professional football player who had been dating the sister of Hernandez's fiancée. Lloyd's body was riddled with gunshots, with the most significant wound being a shot to the back. There were no immediate witnesses, but the police found key clues at the scene that would soon lead them directly to Hernandez. Among the pieces of evidence scattered around the crime scene were shell casings from a Glock 45, a weapon that, as investigators would later discover, was linked to Hernandez. This was just the beginning of a complex investigation that would soon tie the young NFL star to a brutal murder. As the investigation into Odin Lloyd's murder continued, a set of car keys found in Lloyd's pocket would set the course for the next steps in the case. These were the keys to a rented black SUV, registered under none other than Aaron Hernandez. The proximity between Hernandez's home and the crime scene, less than a mile away, was enough to raise suspicions, but at this point, the police had little more than circumstantial evidence. After tracing the rental vehicle, the police learned that it had been used to transport Lloyd just hours before his death. Surveillance footage from Hernandez's house soon revealed even more troubling details. It showed Hernandez, along with his associates Carlos Ortiz and Ernest Wallace, leaving his home in a silver Nissan Altima at approximately 1:12 a.m. Just hours later, at around 2:32 a.m., the vehicle was seen entering the area where Lloyd's body would later be discovered. The most significant evidence came when investigators reviewed footage from Hernandez's security system. Though the system had been intentionally destroyed, police were still able to recover some crucial footage. Hernandez was seen on video handling a gun, although the footage could not conclusively confirm that it was the weapon used in the murder. Still, the mounting evidence was hard to ignore. As the investigation ramped up, Hernandez's behavior became more suspicious. When police arrived at his home to question him, Hernandez refused to cooperate, invoking his right to remain silent and demanding that they leave his property. In a move that immediately raised red flags, Hernandez had also disabled his home security system, a crucial piece of evidence that could have provided insight into the night's events. The fact that Hernandez refused to allow authorities to search his home only added to the growing suspicion. Although he admitted to renting the SUV used in the crime, he made it clear that he would not allow law enforcement to examine any further evidence without a warrant. It seemed like Hernandez was already preparing for a legal battle, but the investigation would not let him off the hook so easily. The night of June 16, 2013, was the beginning of a tragic chain of events that would ultimately lead to the murder of Odin Lloyd. According to the timeline pieced together by investigators, Hernandez, Ortiz, and Wallace spent the evening together, drinking and socializing. Around 1:12 a.m., surveillance footage showed the three men leaving Hernandez's residence in a silver Nissan Altima. What happened next would become a critical part of the investigation. The trio traveled to Coy, Lloyd's house, where they picked him up at around 2:32 a.m. Surveillance cameras captured the moment Lloyd entered the Nissan Altima. But why they returned, Lloyd wasn't with them, and that raised more suspicions. After a brief stop at a nearby industrial park, Hernandez, Ortiz, and Wallace returned to Hernandez's residence just 4 minutes after dropping off Lloyd at the crime scene. Video footage showed Hernandez with a gun in hand, but police could not confirm whether it was the murder weapon. As the investigation unfolded, authorities learned that Hernandez and Lloyd had been involved in a heated argument just days before the murder. It seemed that Hernandez's relationship with Lloyd, once friendly, had become strained. What had triggered the murder? Did Lloyd know something about Hernandez's criminal activities, or was it something more personal? As the pieces of the puzzle came together, the motive remained unclear. The question on everyone's mind was why Hernandez killed Odin Lloyd. Was it because of something that had transpired between the two, or was there a deeper, more sinister reason? There were several theories that investigators explored. What do you think motivated Aaron Hernandez to kill Odin Lloyd? Share your theories in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video if you're following the twists and turns of this case. One possible theory was that Hernandez killed Lloyd because he feared that Lloyd might have known about his involvement in other criminal activities, including a double homicides in Boston in 2012. Lloyd may have been a liability, someone who knew too much and was a threat to Hernandez's secret life. Another theory was that Hernandez's actions were driven by a growing paranoia and the influence of drugs, alcohol, and the pressure of his fame. Whatever the reason, the brutal murder of Odin Lloyd would set in motion a legal battle that would end Hernandez's NFL career and his life as he knew it. The investigation into the murder of Odin Lloyd moved swiftly once authorities connected Aaron Hernandez to the crime scene. It began with the discovery of the rented SUV, traced back to Hernandez, and grew stronger with each new piece of evidence. The police knew they were dealing with a high-profile case, and with Hernandez's NFL stardom under the microscope, they could not afford to miss any detail. The first major step for investigators was obtaining a search warrant for Hernandez's home. Without Hernandez's cooperation, police had to rely on legal procedures to access his property. The search turned up several crucial items, including security footage, which, despite Hernandez having destroyed his home surveillance system, managed to capture significant moments. The footage showed Hernandez, along with his associates, Carlos Ortiz and Ernest Wallace, leaving his residence on the night of the murder. Their movements were tracked by cell phone towers, and the investigation revealed they had all been in close proximity to the crime scene. As the investigation continued, the police discovered troubling links between Hernandez's associates and the crime. Carlos Ortiz and Ernest Wallace were both implicated in the murder, with Ortiz arrested just days after the discovery of Lloyd's body. Wallace, who had been seen on surveillance footage with Hernandez, was also brought in for questioning. As police gathered more evidence, they began focusing on Hernandez's associates, who were crucial to piecing together the details of the murder. Carlos Ortiz was one of the first to be brought in for questioning. The police knew that if they could break Ortiz, they could break the case wide open. Ortiz, under intense questioning, began to crack. After several hours, he implicated Hernandez in the murder, revealing chilling details about the events leading up to Lloyd's death. Ortiz told detectives that Hernandez was the mastermind behind the killing, a claim that would prove to be a pivotal moment in the investigation. If you're intrigued by how Ortiz turned on Hernandez, let us know what you think about the power of interrogation in criminal investigations. Meanwhile, Ernest Wallace Kapoor was also questioned, and his involvement became clearer with each passing day. The police were now certain that Hernandez was not acting alone. He had two accomplices who played key roles in the murder. But the case would get even murkier when Hernandez's girlfriend, Shayana Jenkins, became involved in the investigation. Jenkins was seen leaving Hernandez's home with a large trash bag in the days following the murder. Police believed the bag may have contained the murder weapon. But despite several searches of Hernandez's property, the weapon was never found. The breaking point in the investigation came when Aaron Hernandez was arrested on June 26, 2013, at his home in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. The news sent shockwaves through the NFL and sports world. Hernandez, once a beloved player for the New England Patriots, was now facing charges of first-degree murder, carrying a firearm without a license, and several other firearm-related offenses. What do you think about Hernandez's arrest and the public reaction? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe the NFL should have handled the situation differently? The police arrested Hernandez in a quiet, unexpected manner, but the news spread quickly. Television stations and news outlets immediately picked up the story, and it was impossible for the public to ignore the significance of this arrest. Hernandez's involvement in a murder was unfathomable for many. Just months earlier, he had been playing in the Super Bowl, living the dream life of an NFL star. Now, he was facing the loss of his career, his freedom, and possibly his life. The New England Patriots, who had been one of the NFL's most successful teams in the previous seasons, moved swiftly to distance themselves from Hernandez. Just hours after the arrest, they released a statement, terminating Hernandez's contract and making it clear that they would not tolerate such actions from one of their players. The team's decision was met with a mixture of shock and disbelief, as Hernandez was a key player in their offense and had been part of their success. In the wake of the arrest, Hernandez's public image was shattered. Fans, teammates, and media alike were left to wonder how someone with so much to lose could end up being charged with such a heinous crime. The media circus that followed only fueled the public's fascination with Hernandez's fall from grace. But for Hernandez, the legal battle had just begun, and what followed would be a fight for his freedom and his legacy. On January 29, 2015, the trial of Aaron Hernandez began in Bristol County Superior Court. The prosecution and defense were ready for what would become a high-stakes battle in a courtroom full of media, legal experts, and spectators. Hernandez, once a household name for his remarkable talent on the football field, now found himself in the spotlight for an entirely different reason: his alleged role in the brutal murder of Odin Lloyd. The trial was a spectacle, with cameras documenting each dramatic moment. Key witnesses took the stand, including Carlos Ortiz, who had already implicated Hernandez in the murder. His testimony was pivotal, as it linked Hernandez directly to the crime. Ortiz's account of the night leading to Lloyd's death further corroborated the timeline provided by RON surveillance footage and cell tower data, all of which pointed to Hernandez being at the scene. But the most compelling and controversial testimony came from mental health experts. Hernandez's defense team sought to argue that he was not in full control of his actions due to psychological issues, specifically chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE. CTE, a degenerative brain disease caused by repeated head trauma, was becoming more widely recognized for its effects on athletes, particularly football players. Experts testified that Hernandez had suffered from advanced CTE, which could explain his violent behavior and emotional instability. Intrigued by how CTE played a role in Hernandez's defense? Let us know what you think about the impact of brain injuries on athletes by leaving a comment below. The prosecution, however, painted a different picture. They argued that Hernandez's violent tendencies were not due to CTE, but rather a product of his increasingly violent and paranoid behavior. The prosecution laid out a compelling case using witness testimony, security footage, and forensic evidence. One of the most significant pieces of evidence was a marijuana joint found at the crime scene that had Hernandez's DNA on it, placing him at the scene of the murder. The courtroom became a battleground for both the defense and the prosecution. Hernandez's defense team, led by his attorney, James Sultan Corti, argued that the evidence against Hernandez was circumstantial and could not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he was responsible for the murder. They pointed out inconsistencies in witness testimonies and emphasized the lack of a murder weapon as a significant gap in the case. At the time of Hernandez's death, the dangers of CTE were just beginning to be understood, and research into the disease was in its infancy. However, as more was learned about CTE, experts began to wonder, could Hernandez's violent tendencies, his erratic behavior, anger issues, and eventual involvement in murder have been linked to the brain damage caused by his years of playing football? In Hernandez's case, the question of CTE was particularly poignant. As a young football player who had played the game for years, enduring countless hits to the head, Hernandez's brain was increasingly showing signs of damage. His behavior was at times erratic and violent, raising the question, was CTE contributing to his actions? Or was it a combination of factors, including his upbringing and personal struggles? If you want to learn more about how CTE impacts behavior and its growing recognition in sports, let us know in the comments. We'll be covering more on this in future videos. The mystery of what contributed to Hernandez's violent behavior came into sharper focus after his autopsy. After his tragic death by suicide in 2017, Hernandez's brain was sent for examination to Dr. Anne McKee, a renowned neuropathologist who had studied the effects of CTE in athletes. What she found was shocking. Hernandez had advanced CTE, the most severe case of brain damage she had ever seen in someone his age. Shocked by the findings of Hernandez's autopsy? Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can keep up with this gripping story. Hernandez was just 27 years old at the time of his death, and yet his brain resembled that of someone far older. In fact, his CTE was found to be consistent with brains of players in their 60s, many of whom had a history of violent behavior and mental health issues. The severity of his CTE was believed to have played a significant role in the changes to his behavior, his emotional regulation, and ultimately his violent outbursts. However, the question remained: how much of Hernandez's criminal behavior could be attributed to his brain injury, and how much was a result of his upbringing, environment, and personal choices? Mental health experts have long debated whether Hernandez was a product of his circumstances or a product of his brain injury. Dr. Robert Cantu, a leading expert on CTE, speculated that the damage caused by the repeated blows to Hernandez's head exacerbated his impulsivity and aggression. He believed that the combination of Hernandez's violent upbringing, his emotional struggles, and his untreated brain injury created a perfect storm that ultimately led to his violent behavior. What do you think? Was Hernandez's behavior driven more by his upbringing or by his brain injury? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let's discuss the complexities of his psychological profile. Some experts argue that Hernandez's violence may have been deeply rooted in his traumatic childhood, especially the abusive relationships with his father. Dennis Hernandez's intense pressure and violent discipline left a lasting imprint on Aaron. These psychological scars, combined with the brain trauma Hernandez experienced on the football field, likely fueled his aggression. Yet Hernandez's actions were not solely the result of one factor. His increasingly erratic behavior, drug use, and violent outbursts may have been exacerbated by CTE, but his environment, including his involvement with criminal associates and his lifestyle choices, also played a significant role. The blend of psychological trauma, brain injury, and personal decisions created a dangerous and volatile mix. As the evidence surrounding CTE grew, so did the scrutiny on the untold. For years, the league had ignored the dangers of head injuries, and many players, like Hernandez, were not fully aware of the long-term risks associated with concussions and repeated brain trauma. The NFL was slow to respond to the mounting evidence of CTE's effects on players, and as a result, many athletes, including Hernandez, continued to play without understanding the potential consequences for their health. In Hernandez's case, the NFL's lack of education and prevention programs around CTE was a major issue. The league had failed to adequately address the growing concerns about concussions, and as a result, players like Hernandez were left to suffer the consequences. It wasn't until after his death that the NFL began taking CTE more seriously, launching initiatives aimed at protecting players and educating them on the dangers of head injuries. The NFL's failure to protect its players, and the lack of early intervention to address Hernandez's behavior, played a pivotal role in shaping his tragic fate. While the league has made strides in recent years to address the dangers of CTE and improve safety protocols, Hernandez's story serves as a painful reminder of the long-term effects of a contact sport like football. In 2017, just 2 years after his conviction for the murder of Odin Lloyd, Aaron Hernandez was also tried for the double homicide crimes of Daniel de Abreu and Safiro Furtado, 2 men killed in a drive-by shooting outside a nightclub in Boston boroughs in 2012. Hernandez's alleged involvement in the shooting came after a confrontation at the club, where Hernandez reportedly believed the 2 men had disrespected him by spilling a drink on him. Despite overwhelming evidence linking Hernandez to the crime, including ballistic analysis showing that the bullets used were from a .38 Smith Wesson, the same caliber of gun Hernandez was known to have, Hernandez was acquitted of the charges in April 2017. The trial revealed details about his violent tendencies and the world he had been living in, but the jury ultimately decided that there was not enough evidence to convict him beyond a reasonable doubt. The acquittal was a bittersweet victory for Hernandez, but it also highlighted the deep legal complications surrounding his case. While it provided a small glimmer of hope for his future, it could not erase the fact that Hernandez was already serving a life sentence ban for Odin Lloyd's murder. In the midst of the trial, Hernandez's world was falling apart. On April 19, 2017, just days after his acquittal in the double homicide case, Aaron Hernandez took his own life in his prison cell at the Souza Baranowski Correctional Center in Massachusetts. He was found hanging from a bedsheet tied to the window of his cell. The news of his death sent shockwaves through the public, as the once promising NFL star had gone from a convicted murderer to a man who had tragically ended his own life. Hernandez's suicide was both unexpected and deeply puzzling. While he had been acquitted in one case, he was still facing other legal challenges, including the murder of Odin Lloyd. But what made his death even more enigmatic were the more cryptic notes he left behind. On the floor of his cell, prison officials found 3 handwritten notes, one of which was directed to his fiancée, Shayana Jenkins, and the others were addressed to his daughter. In addition to the notes, investigators found an open Bible in his cell with John 3:16 written on his forehead, the verse that had become significant to Hernandez during his time playing alongside Tim Tebow at the University of Florida. Aaron Hernandez's death triggered an unexpected legal twist. Under Massachusetts law, a person's criminal conviction can be vacated if they die before exhausting their legal appeals. This legal loophole meant that Hernandez's first-degree murder conviction for the killing of Odin Lloyd was overturned, making him, in the eyes of the law, an innocent man at the time of his death. This controversial decision led to an intense debate over whether it was fair for Hernandez's conviction to be erased after his death. While some viewed it as a technicality, others argued that it was a way of providing closure to his family. Hernandez's legal team pushed for the ruling, but the courts decided that the conviction should be voided. The state's decision was seen as a legal victory for Hernandez's family, but it did little to change the perception of Hernandez as a man who had been convicted of a brutal murder. Hernandez's death left both his family and the public side in turmoil. For his family, his suicide was a tragic and devastating loss. Terry Hernandez, Aaron's mother, had struggled to come to terms with her son's criminal conviction, and his death only added to her pain. She had visited him regularly in prison, holding out hope for his eventual release or a new trial. His fiancée, Shayana Jenkins, who had stood by him throughout the entire legal ordeal, was left to grapple with the harsh reality of his death and the complexity of their relationship. In the media, Hernandez's death sparked heated debates about his legacy. Was he a victim of the system, a product of his upbringing and his brain injury? Or was he simply a man who had made choices that led to his downfall? Public opinion was sharply divided. Some saw him as a tragic figure, a young man whose life was marred by circumstance and brain damage. Others viewed him as a cold-blooded killer who had taken the lives of others without remorse. The NFL, still reeling from the effects of the CTE epidemic, was left to reckon with the fact that a player who had once represented the league so successfully had ended his life in such a tragic and violent manner. The league was criticized for not doing enough to protect players from the long-term effects of head injuries, and Hernandez's case became a symbol of the dangers that athletes face in contact sports. Aaron Hernandez's tragic story is a stark reminder of the dark side of fame. For many, the idea of achieving success in the NFL represents the pinnacle of achievement, fame, wealth, and the ability to live a life of luxury. But for Hernandez, this lifestyle came with immense pressure. As his profile grew, so did the expectations placed on him, both on and off the field. The fame that once promised a bright future soon became a heavy burden that he struggled to bear. The constant spotlight, combined with his personal struggles and toxic relationships, seemed to push Hernandez further into a spiral of destructive behavior. His violent outbursts, substance abuse, and associations with criminal elements were all symptoms of a deeper issue: the inability to cope with the overwhelming pressures that fame and wealth can bring. This collision of success and personal turmoil led Hernandez down a dangerous path, one that would eventually lead to his arrest and, ultimately, his tragic death. The case of Aaron Hernandez shines a much-needed light on the mental health challenges faced by athletes, especially those in high-impact sports like football. Hernandez's violent tendencies, mood swings, and erratic behavior point to the possibility of 9 undiagnosed mental health issues that were never properly addressed. The stigma surrounding mental health in sports, particularly in football, often prevents athletes from seeking help, fearing it would undermine their toughness or jeopardize their careers. The tragic reality is that Hernandez's issues were likely exacerbated by chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a disease that many football players suffer from due to repeated concussions and head trauma. While CTE is only diagnosed posthumously, it is clear that Hernandez exhibited many of the symptoms associated with the disease, including violent behavior and mood instability. However, Hernandez's struggles weren't just about physical injury, they were also about emotional pain. His complicated relationship with his family, particularly with his father, and the trauma he experienced after his father's death, may have contributed to his violent tendencies. Without proper mental health support, Hernandez found himself trapped in a cycle of self-destructive behavior. In the years following Hernandez's death, the NFL has faced increasing scrutiny over its handling of key and mental health issues. The league, which once dismissed the long-term effects of head trauma, has since taken steps to improve player safety and address mental health concerns. Initiatives like concussion protocols, better training on the risks of head injuries, and increased awareness of KNOR have been implemented to protect current and future players. Do you think the NFL has done enough to address CTE and mental health? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for future content on sports health and safety. However, the question remains, has the NFL done enough? While steps have been taken to mitigate the risks, many feel that these changes came too late for players like Aaron Hernandez. The mental health crisis in sports, particularly in football, continues to be a major issue. Players are still not given the proper tools to deal with the psychological and emotional toll that the sport can take on them. Hernandez's death serves as a wake-up call to the NFL and other sports organizations about the importance of mental health care. The story of his tragic decline is not just about one man's fall from grace, but a broader conversation about the need for better support systems in professional sports. As Hernandez's case shows, when mental health issues and physical trauma go untreated, the consequences can be devastating. It's time for the conversation around mental health in sports to evolve, and for the systems in place to genuinely support athletes, both on and off the field. Aaron Hernandez's life and death are a tragic reminder of the dangers that lie beneath the surface of fame and success. From the heights of NFL stardom to a convicted murderer, Hernandez's journey serves as a cautionary tale about the psychological toll of fame, the dark side of wealth and pressure, and the profound impact of untreated brain injuries. While his athletic talent once made him a hero to fans, his actions off the field revealed a man deeply troubled by personal demons and physical trauma that went largely ignored. His tragic end, marked by suicide in prison, left many questions unanswered, but it also sparked a larger conversation about the mental health of athletes. Hernandez's case is a poignant example of how TT, combined with a traumatic upbringing and emotional struggles, can lead to violence and self-destruction. The NFL's delayed recognition of the risks associated with repeated head trauma only adds to the tragedy of his story, highlighting the need for better support systems for players both on and off the field. In the end, Aaron Hernandez's story is a tragic one, but it holds broader implications. For society's understanding of mental health violence, and to brain injuries and in sports. It's a story that begs the question, how many other athletes are silently battling their own demons? And what more can be done to protect them from a similar fate? As the conversation surrounding CTE and mental health continues to evolve, we can only hope that Hernandez's life, and the lives of others like him, serves as a turning point for the betterment of athletes' well-being in all sports.